Chief Secretary Eric Chan says cross-border travel quota could increase to match demand. More residents go for COVID tests to prepare for mainland trip. U.S. Congress finally chooses speaker after 15 attempts. Welcome to TVB News. Quarantine-free cross-border travel with the mainland will resume tomorrow. Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan said there are still plenty of slots left for Hong Kong residents hoping to travel up north. By 6 p.m, more than 410,000 Hong Kong residents had already booked their places via the government's online application system. Christy Kant reports.
The long-awaited resumption of the first stage of quarantine-free travel between the mainland and Hong Kong will take place tomorrow. Hong Kong residents wanting to travel to the mainland via land checkpoints and Lok Ma Chau Spur Line, Nan Kam Tu and Shun Yuen Bay ports are required to book their places via the government's registration system in advance. And a maximum of 50,000 commuters will be allowed to cross the border via the free checkpoints each way per day. Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan today said some daily quotas are yet to be filled in the coming weeks, suggesting the quota is satisfying current demand. He said the government will closely monitor the situation after the reopening of the border before deciding if there will be changes for the Lunar New Year period. If everything goes smoothly, it is possible the authorities will increase the daily quota. Chan said he believes the resumption of cross-border travel with the mainland will not overburden the city's healthcare system. Under the current arrangement, travelers are required to take a PCR test within 48 hours before departure, whether they are heading to the mainland or coming to Hong Kong. They are only allowed to cross the border with a negative result. Chan noted that this measure will help reduce the risk of cross-infection between residents in Hong Kong and the mainland. The Chief Secretary also said the SAR government is still discussing with mainland authorities about new arrangements for cross-border students. The initial plan is to allow these students to attend school in Hong Kong without the need to book after the Lunar New Year holiday. Chan added that the authorities are considering allowing the students to perform rapid antigen tests instead of PCR tests on a daily basis. Christy Khan, TVB News.
More residents have flocked to community testing centres to take PCR tests prior to the resumption of quarantine-free travel with the mainland. This as travellers need to show a negative PCR test result within 48 hours before their journey. This morning, around 20 people were queuing outside this community testing centre in Shengshui. Testing centre staff said it took around 20 minutes to complete the testing procedure during non-peak hours. Meanwhile, some cross-border bus operators have set up mobile testing stations near their bus stops to offer PCR testing services for travellers. The results can be obtained within 24 hours. Some operators are offering bundles that cost less than $200, which include single journey tickets to the mainland and a PCR test. If travellers want to get the test result within 4 hours, they will have to pay $499 for the service. Hong Kong reported 15,850 new COVID infections today, 509 of which were imported. 72 more patients succumbed to the virus. Meanwhile, private clinics will be allowed to prescribe the 2 antiviral drugs and administer BioNTech bivalent vaccines to visitors from the mainland. Some private clinics said the government had informed them about the new arrangements for prescribing the 2 antiviral drugs to non-local COVID patients. From mid-January, private clinics can purchase the antiviral medication from the drug manufacturers directly, and non-local COVID patients no longer have to provide personal information and medical history if the antiviral drugs are not purchased via the government. Separately, Fosun Pharmaceutical Group earlier announced that Chinese residents on the mainland can register for receiving the BioNTech bivalent vaccine in Hong Kong. Some medical organizations have already planned to offer the vaccination service for non-local residents from mid-January. The cost of receiving a shot will range from $1,400 to $3,000. The mainland's 40-day Chunyun, or the Spring Festival travel rush, began today after the country dropped most travel restrictions. Some 6.3 million passenger train trips are expected on the first day. Crowds flocked to train stations today, mainly traveling to see their families or for sightseeing.
The first Spring Festival travel rush, or Chunyun train, departed at 5 a.m. this morning, leaving the Beijing West Railway Station for Hebei. More passengers were on the move this afternoon. This man said he's tested COVID positive before and felt similar to flu, so he's not concerned about a possible outbreak following the travel rush. But he said it's going to be even more difficult to buy anti-flu medicines in his hometown, Sichuan, than in Beijing. China's railway operators say passengers will enjoy better services as the railway crew have managed to improve transportation efficiency and the response to travelers' needs. And passengers are reminded to purchase train tickets in advance. The travel rush will end on January 27th, which is the 6th day of the Lunar New Year. Tickets for that day will be sold from January 13th. Over at Guangzhou South Station, there were more people than usual. The waiting hall was almost full, with many travelling with luggage. The station is expecting 350,000 passengers on the first day of the travel rush. This Guangzhou resident said she's going back home to spend the Lunar New Year holidays with her family. This woman, meanwhile, bought tickets yesterday to take the high-speed train to Zhuhai before visiting Macau. She said it's the relaxation of testing requirements that prompted her trip to Macau. This official at the Guangzhou South Station said most passengers are students or travelling for work or planning to see their families. He added workers will step up efforts to disinfect the station and protect its workers and travellers. Shanghai's Hongqiao railway station was also filled with crowds. It's expected the three main train stations in the city will carry some 230,000 travellers today. But it was a foggy day to travel at Bazhong City in Sichuan province, prompting 16 toll booths to suspend services temporarily. Some cars were parked to one side for drivers to wait for the weather to improve.
China is in talks with Pfizer to secure a license that will allow domestic drug makers to manufacture and distribute a generic version of the U.S. firm's COVID-19 antiviral drug Paxlovid in the country. The antiviral medication has been shown to reduce the risk of hospitalization and death from COVID-19 by 88% if taken within 5 days of contacting symptoms. China's medical products regulator, the National Medical Products Administration, has been in talks with Pfizer since last month. In Washington, Republican Kevin McCarthy was elected U.S. House Speaker on a historic post-midnight 15th ballot. McCarthy overcame holdouts from his own Republican Party and floor tensions that boiled over after a chaotic week that tested the new GOP majority's ability to govern. He succeeds Nancy Pelosi as Republicans take control of the House of Representatives. Nasvi Karim reports.
These were the scenes soon after Kevin McCarthy lost the 14th round of voting for the post of U.S. House of Representatives Speaker. McCarthy facing off with Florida's Representative Matt Gaetz, who had refused to vote for the Republican leader, leaving 2 votes shy of the required 218.
And the next Speaker of the 118th Congress, Kevin McCarthy.
Just a few hours later, after midnight in Washington, McCarthy was holding the gavel, finally winning over Republican holdouts in the 15th ballot to become House Speaker. It was the longest voting process for the position since the Civil War era, dragging on for 4 grueling days.
That was easy, huh? I never thought we'd get up here. You know, my father always told me, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And now we need to finish strong for the American people. To Leader Jeffries, there will be times we agree, and many times we will differ. I promise our debates will be passionate, but they will never be personal. That's my commitment to you.
McCarthy managed to flip around 20 conservative holdouts, including the chairman of the Chamber's Freedom Caucus. But he will be seen as a weakened speaker after giving concessions to the Republican rebels, who accuse him of being not conservative enough. The main concession is restoring the House rule that would allow any single member to call a vote to oust the Speaker from office. Earlier, after losing the 14th ballot, McCarthy confronted Florida Representative Matt Gaetz, who refused to vote for him. At one point, it seemed there would be a physical attack as Alabama's Mike Rogers appeared to charge towards Gaetz. He was held back by Richard Hudson. Republicans quickly moved to adjourn, but McCarthy rushed forward to switch his vote to remain in session as colleagues chanted one more time.
Bishop of North Carolina.
When it came to the 15th round of voting, a couple of Republicans voted present.
Gaetz. Present.
Including Gaetz, reducing by 2 the majority McCarthy needed to seal the vote.
The total number of votes cast is 428, of which the Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 216.
It was a chaotic start to the new Congress, with Republicans taking over the House, but Democrats still in charge of the Senate. The compromises McCarthy agreed to, though, would dilute his powers as Speaker and give rank-and-file lawmakers more influence in drafting and passing legislation. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Welcome back to TVB News. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Algernon Yao said many large exhibitions are keen to return to Hong Kong following the easing of anti-pandemic rules. His comments came after many exhibition organizers switched their events to other countries during the epidemic. But today, the city's commerce chief said some exhibitions organizers have reached out to the authorities asking when they can come back to Hong Kong to host the events. Algernon Yao added Hong Kong will be able to join the regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement by the middle of the year at the earliest. He said the city has already garnered support from many ASEAN nations. 10 people who took part in rioting during the PolyU siege in 2019 were sentenced to between 50 and 52 months behind bars. The incidents occurred during the anti-government protests. In November 2019, protesters gathered near Nathan Road with police firing tear gas and arresting over 200 people. 11 people were charged with rioting and only one of them was cleared of the charges. The judge said that the defendants, by being on the protest site and supporting the rioters, are not exempted from receiving a lighter penalty. 4 of the defendants were aged below 21 at the time of the incident, and the judge deemed they were more likely to have been influenced by the social atmosphere of the time. Ant Group's founder Jack Ma will give up control of the Chinese fintech giant, the group says, 2 years after its stock market debut was aborted. Ant's $37 billion IPO, which would have been the world's largest, was cancelled at the last minute in November 2020, leading to a forced restructuring of the fintech firm. Ma's ceding of control comes as Ant is nearing the completion of its 2-year forced restructuring. Ant operates China's mobile payment app Alipay, the world's largest, which has more than 1 billion users. The world's biggest consumer electronics and tech innovation event, the CES, is taking place in Las Vegas this week. Tracy Furness has more.
Consumer electronics and tech companies are showing off their latest products this week at CES, formerly known as the Consumer Electronics Show. The annual trade show officially opened Thursday with crowds of investors, media and tech workers streaming into cavernous Las Vegas venues to see the latest tech innovations from big companies and startups alike. And they did not disappoint. BMW showcased a new color-changing car that morphs like a chameleon into different colors to suit the driver's mood. The German automaker unveiled its color-changing e-ink technology last year at the event, but the color range was limited to black, white and gray.
We've gone full color. So from black and white, now we have, again, a world's first, but this time full color changing car. And it is e-ink, so it still has the advantages of being true color, and thus it looks great in sunlight. And it's still bistable. That means changing a color requires only a little bit of energy, and holding it requires no energy at all.
Making waves on the water, or rather above the water, is a flying boat. The C8, 8.5-meter long boat uses hydrofoils to fly over the water. Created by Swedish company Candela, the all-electric speedboat cruises at a speed of 20 knots for about 2.5 hours.
So we're on board the Candela C8, and unlike a traditional boat that slams, it waves a lot, this boat flies over them, and there's a computer that handles the flying, so it's a smooth and level ride in almost all conditions. A lot of people don't like go boating because they get seasick, but you can't get seasick in a Candela.
For fitness fans, how about an everlasting fitness tracker, which could be the first of its kind in the world? Made by French-based innovation lab Barracuda, the Be Heart watch gathers its energy from small solar panels on the watch band that reacts to sunlight, as well as absorbing kinetic energy that the body produces. The fitness tracker won the CES Innovation Award in the sustainability category. And if you find it hard to find a perfectly ripe avocado, this one is for you. Entrepreneur Marco Snickers has developed a produce checker which tells if an avocado is ripe after scanning it. His Dutch startup, 1/3, already predicts the shelf life of tomatoes, strawberries and blueberries, and say it will further expand its ability to determine ripeness, aiming to reduce food wastage around the world. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.